Convergence is the worst non-Heroes in Crisis event in DC history. And that's saying something, considering DC has some pretty bottom-of-the-barrel events. I mean, you got Zero Hour, Identity Crisis, Cry for Justice, like 50 New 52, Robert Venditti Green Lantern crossovers, all ridiculously bad books. So that means you have to be some kind of especially unbearable event to be worse than these books. And don't worry, Convergence is. It's not madness, it's worse. It's Convergence. Convergence is an event celebrating the history of the DC universe. So in order to handle this monumental task, DC hires a guy who's never written a comic before in his life and decides to make the main characters from Earth 2. What Convergence really is was an excuse for DC to publish 2 months of straight filler while they moved offices from New York to California. No, that's literally what happened. The premise of this event is actually pretty cool. Brainiac has been collecting worlds all throughout DC history right before they die. So we have the pre-Crisis universe, the Flashpoint universe, the Injustice universe, basically all the universes that reminded the audience how brain dead the New 52 was. Anyway, Brainiac makes all these cities play Battle Royale to see which one is the strongest. And he does this because science or something. I don't really care why though, I just kind of want to see all these different cities fighting different cities. Unfortunately that happens in literally 0 pages of this book. So let me give you a quick summary of this completely ridiculous story. It starts with the heroes of Earth 2 arriving on an alien planet. Actually, no wait, it starts with Superman being captured by a giant blood moon Brainiac, but this literally never leads to anything, so it's not even really worth getting into. So the writers really rely heavily on the fact that we like these Earth 2 characters, but we just don't. Like, why is this book about characters from Earth 2? Why isn't it about literally any one of the fucking people who are actually in the domes and fighting each other? The correct answer to this question is that so they can release 40 separate tie-in series that actually follow any of the characters you really care about. The series is basically just an ad for the tie-in books. But you know what the fun part is? None of these tie-ins actually show any of the fighting either. The end of each issue 1 is literally Telos telling them to fight. So we get 1 issue of fighting in some of these tie-ins. I mean, this series is supposed to be about worlds fighting each other. That's the only thing they promised, and it doesn't even accomplish that. And if the story isn't about the people fighting each other, why can't it be about the characters from the main DC universe? Why does it have to be Earth 2? Anyway, these guys basically walk around this deserted planet until they meet the worst character in comic book history, Telos. Look at this man's costume. Does this look like the costume of a good character? Exactly. So Telos is the planet, by the way. Also, Telos is the son of Brainiac. Oh yeah, remember Brainiac? Yeah, he's actually not here right now. He's off on an even worse book right now, so Telos is in charge. Remember when I said this book had Brainiac in it? Yeah, well, it just doesn't anymore. They could have just used Brainiac for this story. It'd be the same thing, but no, it's Telos. Everything is Telos. I hate this dumb-looking character and his dumb-looking outfit and his dumb character arc. Also, they give him his own series after this. So for some reason, Telos decides that all these cities have to fight now. He assumes that Brainiac, who is a collector of worlds, wants him to make all these cities fight while he is gone. Why would you think that? Why would that ever matter? You know what I wouldn't want someone doing to my comic collection while I was gone? Literally destroying all but one of them. Why does he need to prove which city is the strongest? There's no, threat coming or anything. This literally makes no sense. So while all these worlds play Hunger Games, the brilliant mind of Jeff King decides to instead show our favorite heroes from Earth 2 going underground for some reason. And there just happens to be another world under this one. This is Scartaris. It's from an old series from the 70s. And this series about DC history hinges heavily on the fact that you love this super obscure 70s comic. But even if you did love it, they basically kill off all the characters in this book, so it doesn't really matter anyway. Then it turns out this guy named Deimos is the real villain of this story. Why? I don't know. He has all these time travelers for some reason as well. Anyway, Brainiac is alive now. Also, he's trapped in a Pokeball. But that doesn't matter because Deimos immediately kills him. Also, Telos is apparently one of the characters from this old Warlord comic that Brainiac turned into a planet somehow. And then Warlord dies. Do you remember when this book was supposed to be about worlds fighting each other? So it turns out this planet is breaching into the main DC universe, and the heroes comment that this is unlike anything they've ever seen before. Oh yeah, what about any of the other crises? Isn't this literally the exact same thing, but not even as bad as those? Also, this guy right here, he's just supposed to be dead. It's almost like DC hired a guy to write this book who's never written a comic before in his life. Then Deimos says the countdown has begun. Uh-oh. Then Deimos says all the cities have to serve under him now, then some don't, then some do, and then somewhere in here Earth 2 Dick Grayson became Batman. Then Deimos dies, and then there's still a whole fucking issue of this goddamn book left. So in order to suck $4 more out of fans, oh wait, this book cost $5, they decided that the whole universe is getting rewritten. So it turns out Brainiac is alive again, except he's a good guy now, and he sacrifices himself to save the world, and then Telos tries to kill the guys from Earth 2. And then the guys from Earth 2 make the planet their new home, and Telos is totally cool with it. Dude, you just tried killing them 2 panels ago. And they all lived happily ever after, except nothing really happened. At the end, they just kind of say how none of this really happened anyway. Why does DC think anyone cares about Earth 2? Why is Brainiac not the villain of this book? Why? A lot of things. So why is this book so bad? I mean, besides Earth 2 and the complete lack of any actual converging of worlds, there is a scene in this book where Batman meets his father. Except it's not actually our Batman, and it's his father from Earth 2. But this has so much potential still. This could have been such a good moment, but instead, Dick Grayson can't shut his mouth for 2 whole pages. We get text bubble after text bubble describing how he could never know what they said during their discussion. You know how you could achieve the same effect? Not have any word bubbles during their discussion. I just think the writers didn't actually have a good enough of an idea of what to say in this scene, so they just talk about how cool it was without actually showing it. But this is just one example of a larger problem. There are too many words in this book. Comics are a visual medium. Unlike Tom King's Batman, you do actually need words in your books. But this is just abysmal. I mean, look at this panel. This is just ridiculous. It doesn't help that none of the narration or dialogue is any good, but I'm sure you figured that out by now. This book ties into like every dumb New 52 book ever. Let's look at the books DC recommends you read before you jump into this. We got Future's End, Earth 2 World's End, and Superman Doomed. And do you know what all 3 have in common? They're all pretty terrible. Future's End might be an even dumber series than Convergence, and that's saying something. You know how Convergence starts with this cool issue with Superman and Brainiac and then never does anything with that ever? Well, Future's End does the exact same thing but with Brother Eye. We literally never see this part of the book again for the rest of the series. And for a book called Future's End, it doesn't have an actual fucking ending. The book literally ends with future Tim Drake becoming Batman Beyond for some reason. If you bought every issue of this book, it would cost you $144. And it doesn't end. After $144 of boring plotline after plotline, the book says, oh hey, go buy this new Batman Beyond book. Also, Blood Moon Brainiac shows up for like an issue of this series and then goes away because there can only be like one giant supercomputer villain in the series or something. And after Convergence, DC has the nerve to release a 6-issue Telos mini. No one asked for this. He literally doesn't even have any superpowers at the end of the series. Why does this exist? Anyway, you know how like most DC trades have an IGN quote talking about how this book is like superheroes at its finest or something? Yeah, Telos Volume 1 just doesn't. It literally has no reason to exist. I already talked about it, but I want to emphasize how much of a money grab this thing was by DC. It used fans' favorite characters as bait to reel them into buying Telos Fest and his friends from Earth 2. If you purchase the main series, which is 9 issues at $4.99, and all 40 tie-ins, which each cost $3.99, you would be paying $364.11 for this thing. That's absolutely ridiculous. Even if you were to purchase the trade paperback plus 8 tie-in and paperbacks, it would still cost you $185. Do you know why no one reads comic books? I mean, besides the fact that they're super confusing, tucked away in LCSs, and not new reader friendly, it's because they're so expensive. I could buy the trade paperback for Convergence or 2 months of Netflix. And the trade I'm done with in almost about an hour or 2. Comics are already expensive as is, so when DC tries to push a cash grab like this, it's just insulting to fans. I know you don't have to buy any of these books, but I want my comics to matter. I don't want 2 months of filler. So you know how this book ended with the Telos planet rewriting most of reality? Basically the way that worked was Flash, Supergirl, and Parallax, for some reason, all decided to go back to the original Crisis so that they could die and the world can be fixed. And DC said this book is beginner friendly. Well, because they did this, DC basically took a new policy on continuity. They said everything is kinda canon and stories don't really have to follow any kind of continuity. Do you know how dumb of an idea that is? What, people just hated the New 52 so much that you guys just said, anything can happen? It's just such a mess. Luckily, DC Rebirth was right around the corner and changed the majority of this mess. But this is just such a lazy excuse for writers to not care about continuity. So that's Convergence, and it's super annoying because somewhere in here there's a good story. You just need to get rid of Telos, get rid of Damios, get rid of Earth 2, change a bunch of the continuity errors, bring Brainiac back, get rid of half of the dialogue boxes, rewrite the ending, change the main cast, cut it down by like 2 issues, make something actually happen, ditch the Warlord stuff, actually go at least 2 feet near any of these cities, change the dialogue. Okay, maybe this thing's not good.